So AEIVA, we're located on the campus, University of Alabama at Birmingham, and we present 8 to 10 exhibitions a year highlighting a mix of regionally, nationally, and internationally acclaimed artists focused almost exclusively on contemporary art. We serve a diverse audience of university faculty, staff, and students, but also artists, museum patrons, and donors. We help represent the visual arts at UAB to local and regional institutions, but also the national and international art community, while simultaneously striving to keep our exhibitions directly relevant and engaging to our surrounding Birmingham communities. Since opening in 2014, AEIVA has been featured in publications such as the New York Times, the Huffington Post, The Nation, Raw Vision Magazine, PBS Canvas, and we are very proud that our exhibitions and related educational programming are free and open to the public. So my name's Christina Mcclellan. I am the education manager for AEIVA, and I'll be one of your hosts for this evening. A quick shout out to any students on the call. This is an event that was the brainchild of our Student Arts Council, which we're very happy to have and still get to meet with virtually during the pandemic. And we look forward to all their contributions and upcoming events for that. So stay tuned. There will be a panel discussion for Black History Month, a virtual concert from them, and a few other things. So just keep checking back on our webpage for those. A note that discriminatory or hate language of any kind will not be tolerated. The session is being recorded, but no, the recordings are largely the screen shares and then Erin and I as we are talking. So we want to encourage you to feel comfortable to turn on your screens. This is a night to kind of decompress, color, but also participate in the discussion about art. I also have a parrot. I'm sorry. That was her.
Perfect.
she's really excited. Okay, so we encourage you guys to ask questions. At the bottom of your screen is a chat feature. Please direct all of your questions to the group, or you can direct them to one of the hosts of the meeting, Rachel Arnson, who's going to wave her hand there. There she is. And so she will ask the questions for you guys as the conversation allows, and any questions we don't get to during the conversation, we'll ask at the end. So please, as a question pops into your mind, just go ahead and type it into the chat. Before we start tonight's event, we do have a few other upcoming events as well. This is a series of Outside the Lines. If you haven't been here before, we do them once a month on the first Thursday of every month. And we're featuring the Department of Art and Art History for this semester. So next month, we will have Derek Krakow on March 4th, the Bachelor of Fine Arts graduating seniors on April 1st, and then on May 6th, we will have Melissa Yes. So we also have quite a few awesome new exhibitions. Check back to our webpage. These will be virtually available to you all as a virtual tour because we are currently, our doors are currently closed to the public, but we wanted to still keep putting on exhibitions and have them available. So those will be up on our website soon. We have several Inside the Arts events going with that. Shona McAndrews, one of the exhibiting artists, will be a part of that. Chamber music, spoken word. And then we are in partnership with Institute of Arts and Medicine, who will have a Mental Health Monday series coming up. Feng Shui workshop is happening this Saturday with Art Play. If you're interested in taking art classes, community art education classes, you can do so through Art Play, and their registration for those are up now. And these are classes from pre-K all the way up to adult. They start in March, so make sure you sign up soon. Okay, that was a lot of announcements. We're really excited about getting the season kind of kicked off, the semester kicked off this week and last week. So let's go ahead and get started. Before I introduce Erin, let's all turn on our cameras if you're available to and just kind of show what you plan on working on. I think a lot of us ended up picking the same one.
I feel ya. Oh, there's a couple of gender equity. All right. Good. Cool.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll check back in at the end of the hour, and yeah, awesome. Yeah. So a lot of us did end up picking similar ones. So we'll check back in at the end of the hour and kind of just share what we did. So let's go ahead and get started and introduce our featured artist of the night, Erin Wright. So Erin is originally from Colorado and earned his BFA in graphic design from Colorado State University, and then an MFA in graphic design and illustration from the University of Arizona. Erin has over 25 years experience as a designer and teacher. His designs have been exhibited all over the world and features heavily on socio-political themes. His posters are in collections also across the world, including the Robert Irwin Archive at the J. Paul Getty Museum in Los Angeles, Fourth Block International Triennial of Eco Posters in Kharkov, Ukraine, the International Poster Collection at Colorado State University, and of course here at AEIVA. Erin has also won several gold and silver Addy Awards, including Designer of the Year and Illustrator of the Year at the Birmingham Addy Awards. In addition to teaching at UAB, Erin is co-founder of Posters Without Borders, a biennial international invitational poster exhibition focusing on political and social issues. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act in 2015, Posters Without Borders held an exhibition at AEIVA titled The Right to Decide, which featured 62 artists from 25 countries with 80 posters focusing on voting rights and fair elections. All posters from the exhibition, including the one designed by Erin, are currently in the collection of AEIVA. So welcome, Erin. We're really excited to have you. I've been looking forward to this for a while because ever since we did that exhibition, I've just wanted to kind of learn more about Posters Without Borders and your work. So really excited to have you.
Happy to be here. I kind of look like the great and wonderful Oz here with just my head showing up there, but that's okay, right? There. Oh, all right. So, Posters Without Borders, or what would you like to talk about?
Let's go ahead and just how did you get into art and what influences you?
You know, that's actually a really interesting question because, like many students, I showed talent, but I really didn't know what to do with that talent. And I remember my art teacher in high school said, well, you should go into graphic design. I had no idea what graphic design was. This is in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. I had no idea. So I started looking around for graphic design programs, found one at the Colorado State University, which just happens to be a terrific graphic design program. And the rest is, as they say, history. I found that it was something that excited me, that made me want to create, before in a lot of my instruction, I had been just replicating, can you draw this? And we would draw that, and we would work on that. And it was cool to see if you could do it really well, but once I got into the university program and they started to mix content and concept and the creative ability, it's like, wow, that's when you're like, this is what I want to do. I want to, and graphic design as a whole was something that interested me because I tend to, and if you've looked at my work, I do work that tends to be more graphic in its content. I mean, like many young men, I started doing comic book types of things early on, which are, just graphic novels, really. But when I was at Colorado State, they had the very first of now, and Eric can help me with this, because my friend Eric Boltz is here, also a former alum and one of my cohorts in Posters Without Borders. But Colorado State had the first and one of the oldest poster biennials in the United States. It's one of the oldest in the world. And I was a student at Colorado State at that time, and I walked in there, and you have to kind of put the time frame into context. This is before the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is back when we were still talking about the Iron Curtain. There was still, communism was the great enemy. And Colorado State had this poster exhibition that had all these Polish posters in there and Yugoslavian posters, and I was blown away. I was just literally blown away because, and this is one of those things I've told some of my students because I incorporate posters in all my classes now, but in Poland at the time, under communist rule, the government controlled all the printing. Anything that was printed under the aegis of the Polish government, which was communist at the time. When Polish designers would create posters, they would create posters that had anti-government content in it, but it was under the guise of being a poster for Hamlet or Macbeth or whatever. And so they were these subversive posters about, about the patriarchy in some cases, or the government abuse in some cases. And then the government paid to have them produced. The irony was just amazing, but it's also the content of those things, to be able to have this visual language where you're doing a poster that has so many different levels of meaning in a very kind of flat space really appealed to me. And it made me want to become when I walked in that, and I still remember, it's kind of, I have those moments in your life that you just are engraved, if you will, in your memory. That the moment I walked into the doors of that very first poster exhibition at Colorado State, I will never forget, because then there was a Polish poster that right in front of me that was like, it just about knocked me over. And I kind of understood from that moment the power of art, and not just art, graphic design too. I think many of my students go into graphic design because they want to make money, and I understand that. I want to make money too, but they have to understand there's so much power there too, because you are in charge of the visual information that people are seeing on a daily basis, and that has impact.
Yeah,
Anyway.
we talk a lot about that at AEIVA with visual literacy, and I can see why that was so impactful. The fact that a picture can have so much, it has almost more impact than words, because words just kind of glaze over at some point, but an image, it's pretty great.
That's a perfect example, Christina, because that Polish poster that I was confronted with when I walked in that door was in Polish. To this day, I don't know a word of Polish, but I knew exactly what that poster was saying. It had that kind of impact on me. So, it's, I think as artists, that's one of the things that, it's one thing to have ability, and I think and I appreciate ability, trust me, I really do. But I think having that reason, that kind of, the raison d'etre, whatever, to get up and say, I got to create this thing. I have got to do this, is the thing that really makes it worthwhile to me.
And so you've mentioned a couple of times teaching through that, and I didn't know if you wanted to go ahead and share your screen. So if there were any examples that you were wanting to show, but you mentioned teaching several times, and you've taught several places throughout your career. Why did you decide to get into teaching in addition to doing graphic design?
Well, and maybe some of my students are listening to this, and I don't apologize. It is what it is. I went back to grad school because when I got out of my undergraduate program, I got a great job working for an engineering firm that hired me to be a graphic designer, and that was in the early 80s, right before the energy crisis of that time. And the engineering firm that I worked for was an energy engineering firm. And within a year of me working there, they cut their staff by half. I was fortunate not to lose my job, but they didn't want me to be a graphic designer anymore. They wanted me to be a technical illustrator, drawing dams and other engineering things. which I was happy to have a job, so I was happy to do that. But after doing that for a couple of years, you know how you kind of feel like you've lost your way, like you're not on the path you wanted to be. And that's when I made the decision to go back to graduate school, to go back into doing graphic design, to be a graphic designer. So that was my motivation. Once I was in graduate school, I'm dead broke, need work, need money. One of the things I could do is I could teach, um, and I loved it. It's again one of those another defining moments when you're in that classroom and you see a light bulb go off over a student's head over something that you said, and it's kind of like, bam, wow, I love this. Not like it's just I felt like I was making an impact, and so then I fell in love with wanting to teach. It's like, okay, I like graphic design well enough, but really, I want to teach. I want to teach, and I want to make posters, and that became kind of the direction I went in doing that. And I think Eric, who is also a terrific poster artist, can probably attest to this. Most people, at least in the U.S., will not make money as a poster artist. They're just that's not it's not as big a deal here, right? You would have to be and doing other work as well, and I love to teach, and so that gives me the ability to be a poster artist without the constraints of having to worry about whether those posters are going to make money or anything like that. I can have posters with social and political content, which is really important to me. When I was little, and this is kind of a lost art, but I wanted to be an editorial cartoonist, right? As I said, I was interested in comic books and things like that anyway. And my dad got the paper every day, and the only parts I ever cared about were the comic pages and the op-ed pages, because they had comics in the op-ed pages. And I was fascinated with political cartooning, editorial cartooning, and that's kind of where I went in that direction with that. And it's political and social subject matter is still kind of my reason to do what I do.
I've noticed in your artwork that too, that kind of going back to that point we made earlier, but also that cartooning, again, the images tend to kind of be the primary part of your posters, as we see here. And there's very few where the emphasis is on the words itself. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about a couple of those.
Sure.
Or we could also, because my next question for you is posters without borders.
Okay.
And then, so whichever one you would like to start with.
Well, let me kind of get into some of the work I do first, and because posters without borders, and Eric's right here, I'd love to have him chime in whenever. He's much smarter than I am, but not nearly as good looking. So at that point, but the beard is nice, dude. I'm liking that. It's been a while.
Thank you.
So let me talk. You're right. A lot of the work I do, as you mentioned, I'm in a lot of international competitions and exhibitions. Poster design is not as big a deal in the United States as it is in Europe, in South America, Asia, partly because we are a car culture. We drive places, right? Whereas in many cities in Europe and in South America and Asia and Europe, I mentioned Europe, they are a pedestrian culture. And so the poster has more kind of oomph there than perhaps it does here. But so many of my posters are out there in the world. If they were so focused on the word, then unless you are fluent in English, then that is a lost kind of translation on you. So, and actually, that's one of the things I love about the posters. I think Eric can attest to this too, is can I say something visually that somebody will understand in Tehran or Tokyo or La Paz, right? They don't have to speak English. It's just like I didn't have to speak Polish when I walked in that. I could see that image and it had that kind of impact and I understood it. I'm losing my earbuds there. I need to have deeper ear canals, I guess. But anyway, so, you know, that's, so a lot of my posters do not have a textual basis as much as they are a visual basis. But I do work with text quite a bit. For instance, I wasn't planning on showing this one, but I'll show you this one. Can you all see that? Where it says Liberty? And this was actually done for a show that was originally in Tokyo. But I was doing this thing and I was playing around with the idea of liberty and what would be the opposite of that. And in this case, can I create something that says, just by rotating the poster 180 degrees, say something completely different? And now it says tyranny, right? So the opposite of liberty is tyranny. And so those kinds of things, there are times when text is really important. As a matter of fact, some of your participants here are working on that gender equity coloring thing. That says, maybe not as successfully, but it says gender. If you show it one way, you turn it and it says equity. If you rotate it 180 degrees, the other direction. So oftentimes I'm trying to work with text in that way. I mean, going into the Posters Without Borders, you were asking about kind of how my process works. Sometimes it's I sketch things out. Sometimes I have an idea that comes almost fully formed to me, like with this one for Posters Without Borders, where I was thinking about a ballot that's being shredded. So what I did is I printed out ballot on a piece of paper and ran it through a shredder, right? And then stopped that. Then I used that for this illustration. You know, so that's a process, certainly. But I wanted to show you, let's go to John Waters, for instance, here. This, back when I was the former chair of the Department of Art at UAB, and so I went to lots of meetings. Rich can attest to the number of meetings that you have to go to as a chair. But I was also working on poster ideas at the time. And here's my sketch for the John Waters. And here is the John Waters poster, right? And you talked about influence. My influences at the time, I was looking at an artist called Charles Burns, that's B-U-R-N-S. Fabulous, fantastic illustrator that works in this black and white, very graphic way. And so I kind of modeled this poster after that. And this was in the print regional annual, which was a big deal at the time and has won some awards. And I have to show you this just because I know my wife and daughter are watching, but right there, I included them in the poster. They were in the illustration.
I love that.
So that's my wife, Laura, and that's my daughter, Rachel, who's now in college, but she's holding a Chucky doll. Because John Waters was in a Chucky movie, right? So all these references to Pink Flamingos and to Divine and all these things that I just had this fun with kind of loading that stuff out. It's just kind of, you know, that's part of it is doing that. As a matter of fact, these two people here are my former students. They were students at the time and now they're former students, obviously. But, you know, and then kind of following through with this idea is we had John Waters as a visiting artist, and we had Laurie Anderson. Laurie Anderson was known for her lyrics and for her poetry. So I did the Laurie Anderson poster, but she is made up of all her lyrics and her poetry. So again, it's like one of the challenges, especially of doing a poster for another artist, is not to just put some of their work there and say, here's this artist, right? Because that would be easy, but it's not very challenging. How can I kind of interpret what that artist does and have some fun with that? So anyway, talking about process, I did a lot of those kinds of things, and you can see I'll have to show you this. This is not the first, but probably the second poster that I ever did that was actually printed. It was when I was a grad student. There was a competition. I won the competition. Not that that was a big deal, because who knows what the rest of the stuff was in there. But anyway, they printed this poster for a student art exhibition. And I want to show you this because even back then, this is one of my very first posters, I was interested in the public participating. I left that balloon, that kind of word balloon there, empty because I wanted to see what people would put in there. And these posters were put up all over campus. And then they were all taken right down again because people wrote obscenities in there. But, you know, that's what was there. That's what they were doing, right? But it engaged the viewer to participate, not just to look, but to actually be part of with that. And I wanted to talk about this one because of process, but I wanted to show, as if I've got any students looking at this, this is what we used to have to do. Eric knows this too, is, you know, you didn't just put it on the computer and press Command P and print it out. You had to do, this is the line art for it. This is at full scale on illustration board. It's all done in ink. And then this is an amberlith overlay that says print this color in that area, and another amberlith overlay to print these colors in those areas. So again, part of that is just to show you process as far as that goes, and then a tracing paper cover page. But you know, and the process changes. It just depends. On this one here, this is for a poster that was in Taiwan. I was invited to do a poster for an exhibition in Taiwan, and the subject matter was love and peace. So I thought, well, peace, maybe peace sign, love, you know, heart. How can I kind of combine those ideas? So I put my hand on a white background, took a picture of it, and then kind of put a screen over that, and then I drew in the heart in between the two fingers for the love and peace idea. And I thought, well, I love that. That's working really well. And I was actually working on this poster while I was doing a workshop in Mexico when I was at the Mexico Bienal. It's one of the best top poster biennales in the world. It's easily the biggest one in the Americas, but it's easily the top 5 in the world, which I have to give credit to my friend Eric there, because he's on the jury, the international jury for the next one of those. So congrats to Eric for that. But what I did is I was doing this workshop with these students in Mexico, and I thought, well, I want to see what happens if we have more hands in there. So again, as a participatory sport, think of art as a participatory, and it's hard for me to say that, but sport. I had the students draw their own hearts and then lay down, because I was going to take a picture right here of just the butcher paper in the background there. So it was a similar poster to what I had just done, but with more arms. But looking at that picture, I thought, wow, I love what those students are doing there. So let's make that the poster, right? I get credit for this poster, but those are the students did the hearts. They're the ones that laid on the ground. I took the picture. You know, I did some manipulation with the color, moved the type up and worked with that, added some of this type, but they were the ones. You know, there are lots of ways to create a poster. Matter of fact, this poster, here's the exhibition in Taiwan, and you can see those posters right there. I unfortunately don't get to go to most of the places where my posters get to go. It's like being that parent that sends your children off and they get to have all these adventures that you don't get to experience. Anyway, my posters are out there living La Vida Loca, but, you know, here is the exhibition, and it also got, one poster got included in a recent book on posters. There it is, you know.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's like cool. You know, I was excited about that. I'm still excited about that. Oops, hang on.
You're on the same page with Hamilton too, so.
I am. Well, and it's actually a text full of terrific posters by a lot of great artists. Process. I do a lot of vector illustration. This one was actually Santiago Pol, who's a very famous poster designer in Venezuela, asked me and many other designers to contribute a poster back when Venezuela was having their constitutional crisis, where there was going to be the vote. The president was trying to grab more power by changing the constitution, and there were riots, not riots, there were protests in the streets that became riots because the police and the military came out and started to beat them and all those things. But there's an upcoming really important vote, and Santiago asked me and several other people to submit posters that people could carry in the protests. And this is my poster for that in Venezuela, and this is resist in Spanish. And you know, the protesters are not the ones with the guns, but they have ways of resisting, even in a peaceful way. And well, we saw John Waters already, but I wanted to show you that one. Sorry about that. You get to see John Waters and Laurie Anderson again. Because one of the things about posters is some of it, and this is kind of a subject in the poster community, is, well, it's great to come to do these posters, but really what impact do they have? If you do a poster, save the whales. Is there a single whale that's ever been saved by a poster, right? And I think that's a discussion for maybe a longer platform with this. But one of the things I wanted to say about this poster, again, this one is in Spanish, but Eric and I were both doing a workshop in Mexico again. This one was in Morelia and at the Bienal. And the Bienal happened right after this event. There were 43 students of a teacher's college had commandeered a bus and were going to protest at a speech of the mayor of a major town's wife was giving a speech, and they were going to go protest because of her connection to the drug cartels and things like that. The bus was stopped by the police on the way to the protest, and the police took all the people off the bus, handed them over to the drug cartel, and they were never heard from again. 43 people disappeared into the ether. Eric and I were in Morelia, literally, what was it, Eric, maybe a month, 2 months after that. And matter of fact, our bus that they took us from Mexico City to Morelia was one of the first kind of bus trips that they are allowed to go because of the problems that they were having. And the students were obviously upset. The people were upset. There were protests happening in the street. And one of my students told me about a website where you could design posters for people to carry on the streets during their protests. And I said, I am all about that. So when I got back from to Birmingham, the first thing I did is I designed this poster. And this text says, there were 43 students on this bus. This text says, by silencing 43, they gave voice to thousands. So, because, this was de rigueur, unfortunately, that they had been getting away with this for so long, and this was literally the straw that broke the camel's back. Mm-hmm. And there were mass protests. And so I created this poster and sent it off to this website and thought, okay, I'm done with that. One of my students, hang on, I got to go back there. One of my students started sending me these pictures. That's my poster being carried in the protests that they were having in that town. There were protests in towns all over Mexico, even on the national news,
I think that's such a powerful poster because of the imagery that you have in it, because the flowers kind of coming up is this universal symbol for death or missing, and then of course the megaphone. So even if I didn't know Spanish, I would have been able to figure out this had to do with some sort of morbid event or something along those lines.
Well, exactly, and I cannot pronounce that. I apologize, but that's the area that these students were from. But yes, exactly. I think they're magnolias. Eric, you can maybe help me with that. But they're the flower that's really common to Day of the Dead celebrations, and flowers obviously have connotations for celebrating the dead, going to funerals, laying flowers on graves, and things like that. So I still don't think I saved a whale, but I think what happens is that even, and Eric can attest to this as well, is that a lot of the poster competitions and exhibitions that we're invited to are on subject matters, and just the fact that those subject matters are things that they're focusing on brings that attention to that subject, right? If nobody's talking about it, then it's hidden under the rug or whatever. But the fact that it's there, it's important in that way. So, anyway, my students will tell you I tend to get on soapboxes and whatever, and I go off in tangents all the time too. But
it was fascinating. And so maybe, because I know we're getting short on time, we have about 15 minutes left. So you've referenced Posters Without Borders a couple of times, and I know you wanted to talk a little bit about it too. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? And if Eric would like, we can spotlight him as well.
Okay. First, I'm going to show this picture just because it's got my wife in it. Yay!
Yes!
She is a hero. Okay, so Posters Without Borders. Eric is the owner and chief designer at his own firm called Brain Bolts in Boulder, Colorado. He can tell you more about what that is than I can, but obviously graphic design, branding, all of those things. And I knew each other from my grad school days. His brother was actually my professor at Arizona. We ran into each other after 20 years in Mexico at the Bienal. And with another friend named Antonio Castro, who is a professor at the University of Texas at El Paso, we just started hanging out. We all love posters. We all love design. And we thought, you know what? The United States does not have that many poster exhibitions. The one in Colorado State is one of the top ones in the world, but it's one of the only ones in the United States. And we thought we should do something about that. At that time was right after Alabama had passed that really terrible law about immigration, and Arizona, where Eric and I had both lived and gone to grad school, had passed a similar law about immigrants, and Antonio's in El Paso, and actually has dual citizenship in Mexico and the United States. And we thought we should do one on immigration. So when we got back from Mexico, we organized this poster exhibition called Posters Without Borders. We invited 30 of our closest international poster design friends, and not a single one of them said no. And I'm talking, these are some of the top poster designers in the world, and every one of them freely contributed a poster to this thing, and it was fabulous. And it still kind of lives in some form, that iteration of it. And it was so successful that we decided to continue it with a different theme each time. It's purely an invitational. There's only about 50 designers that get included just because of logistics. We can't handle any more than that. So it's difficult in that way. But we did one on the right to decide. We did one on action, reaction, interaction, which is what this poster was for that I did, which was talking about getting people involved in events that impact their lives, not just letting things happen to you, but actually taking action in that. That one I wanted to show process too. You know, those were all lino cuts. What I did, each of those candles is a separate lino cut, then I combined them all in Photoshop, including the type was all done using old letterpress type and literally stamping each letter out. I'm such an idiot, right? Eric's over there going, what the hell, dude? You could do this so much easier.
The final result is worth it.
Yeah, there you
Without
go.
a doubt.
That's what it is. There you go. But, so, we've been doing this. How many of these have we done now, Eric? 4, 5?
I think we've done 4, and we're working on the 5th.
Right.
But they've been in Mexico and Bolivia, and exhibited in India, and all over the U.S., Florida, Montana, Alabama, just Texas. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah. We still have to decide what we're going to do for our next one, but I want to show you some work. This is not my work. This is one of my favorite designers in Mexico named Renato Aranda. And this was for the original Posters Without Borders exhibition, you know, where he's talking about immigration, and he's from Mexico. So, you know, that's one of the cool things about these things is we're putting out these themes that are general to the entire world. Everybody's got their own take on it, though, whether it's voting rights or immigration. But I love this. I mean, I talk to my students all the time about simple images with complex ideas, right? Making your image complex is not the same thing as having a complex idea. And what Renato has done with this kind of luggage carrier, simply drawn coffin, and even the way that he does the exile type, and as these letters start to fade away and get farther away from their origin, it's incredible conceptually. This is another one from Mexico, our friend Federico Lopez. Again, they have different ideas about, this one's on voting rights. You know, this one is Ted Massif, is a friend of Antonio's. You know, just incredible work that we're getting from these professional artists to do this.
Can you talk a little bit about the research that goes into creating something like this? And then also the theme. Like, how do you guys decide on the theme for each poster?
We hash it out. We get on a Zoom call. What do you think, Eric? You tell me. I've been talking. You talk.
There's usually tequila involved in the decision-making process, I'm afraid. No, we do. We go. There's a process involved with that, trying to figure out what's happening in the world, what is relevant to poster design in terms of that being a vehicle for a concept. One of the last ones was based on the 17 goals of sustainability that the UN has sanctified. And so we gave 3 different designers a goal. And so we ended up with 50, I don't know what that is, 51 different posters. But it depends on what's topical at the time. After Trump was elected, the reaction, interaction, action came up because a lot of people felt sort of impotent at that point. And so it's a blend of what we're aware of and what's happening in the world, I think, that helps us to decide.
And it's difficult because we have a lot of people that want to participate now. Before we were worried, we'd ask these people when we were afraid no one's going to say yes. Everyone said yes. And now we have people, texting us, messaging us, emailing us, camping out on our lawns, whatever.
Yeah,
exactly. Because they want to participate. Just kidding. That was, I didn't mean it. I told you I didn't mean it. But, and so now but we still constrain it to 50. And one of the things that we did recently, and I'm fully on board with this, I wish we had done it originally, but we have committed to having, if we have 50 designers, 50 of them will be women, 50 of them will be men. It's really simple to go out there. I'm sad to say this, but it's easy to go out and there's a wide range of well-known men poster designers. But that doesn't, we want to put our money where our mouth is. This is important to us that we're representative of, and we've never, and Eric can attest to this too, we have never told people what to design. We just said, this is what the subject is. We're interested in your opinion. And we don't always agree with all the opinions, but that's what this course is all about. That's why it's a conversation, right?
Will say I have actually I've pulled, so all of the ones from the Right to Decide exhibition came to our collection, and I've actually pulled them for secondary ed students. And when they come and we talk about, we have several things in our collection that we pull, but we pulled these to say, how do you start a difficult conversation? The course they were taking was how to teach history, essentially. And so we pulled the posters as an example. And then when we were done with kind of showing each set of artworks that we had on the table, almost all of them always gravitated to the posters to say, this is how I would start this conversation on X, Y, Z. I'd probably start here. And so it just kind of goes to show how kind of powerful these types of exhibitions can be. And so, and then again, gravitating towards the more imagery and then not as many words in it. Because when you're in a history class, you're reading all words.
Right,
so it's good to have that kind of visual to really start that conversation.
Exactly. And one of the nice things about the Right to Decide too is with the original Posters Without Borders, Antonio organized a separate exhibition that had to do with dreamers that we companioned with that, where we invited people from the University of Arizona, from UAB, and from El Paso students to submit work. So that was all student work in that show about dreamers. And I have to say, I mentioned this is going to be about dreamers, and many of my students at the time, and this is a while back, they didn't know what that meant. They had no idea about what the DREAM Act was. Mm-hmm. And so that alone was an educational experience. But with the Right to Decide, we invited people that we knew that were teaching there was somebody from Taiwan, there was somebody from, was it Ecuador, Eric? We had somebody from, we had 5 different universities, 3 or so of them were from other places around the globe. And the posters are amazing. I mean, the student work is amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Great. Well, I want to, Rachel, did we have any questions in the chat? Because we're at 5 minutes left.
We did not have any questions.
I talk too much.
No, it's so fascinating though. Just kind of the trajectory and what you latched onto and kind of how it's propelled through your career as well. And you can see it reflected.
Can I do one thing with my shared screen? I want to show some of my student poster work. These are students in my class. And because I'm a poster designer, I give poster projects all the time. These are some of my students, right? Mm-hmm. And for this one in particular, Eric has been down to Bolivia. There's a major poster show in Bolivia as well. A fantastic poster show down in La Paz. It's the biggest one in South America. They had a category for unpublished posters that was open to students and professionals about disinformation. That was the title of it. It was Era of Disinformation. So I gave that as a project to my students. And Evan Franklin created this poster and then sent it off to Bolivia. And you can see it down there. It was one of the ones that was selected. Now let me put a little bit of context on there. Bolivia receives between 10 and 12,000 entries, and they select 300 posters out of over 10,000 entries. And Evan was one of those people that got selected. So I know. Cool stuff, right? Yeah. Very proud of him.
That's one of the most rewarding things about teaching, I'm sure, is seeing when your students kind of start to get into something like that. And
yeah, when that light bulb goes like that, it's like, wow. Yay.
Great. Well, Erin, I've really enjoyed it. If you don't mind, stop sharing your screen and we'll put everyone back to grid view. And yes, gracias. We'll go ahead let me actually switch it back to, I have to cancel the spotlights, move it to grid view. Great. Okay. Well, if you've been working on something through the evening, we would love to see it, and just go ahead, and I didn't get very far, obviously, but go ahead and hold it up to the screen and we'll get a screenshot here in just a minute. Yay. I love seeing which ones people picked and, you know, the colors they choose and everything. Great. Well, thank you so much, Erin. We really enjoyed having you. I've really enjoyed learning more about this.
Thank you.
And we've had you in a couple of the shows here, and so I've always wanted to learn more. And so I'm really glad that you were able to make it on.
Obviously, I'm sorry if I talk too much, but I do get passionate about those kinds of things. Frankly, that's, you know, why I do what I do.
And that's why we're very glad to have you at UAB, for sure. Well, great. Thank you, everyone. And remember, our next coloring night is on March 4th with Derek Krakow. And so we will see you all then. Bye. And hi, Rich. I didn't see you until just earlier.
Great job, buddy.
Thanks, Eric, dude. We got to
I saw a couple of posters in there that I need. I need copies of a couple of those, buddy.
All right, all right. You know, they only cost a little bit more for you, but not a lot.
Yeah, that's to be expected.
So friends and family discount, but the other way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Thanks very much, you guys.
Catch up soon, okay?
All right. Adios, y'all.
Take care, buddy.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.